I'm Ben Protest with the New York Times. I'm joined by Congressman Barney Frank, the co-author of the Dodd-Frank Act. Welcome.
Thank you.
Here we are a year later, and it's somewhat bogged down in delays and complaints. Is there anything you could have done differently to not perhaps punt as much to the regulators, to enforce more of the law?
Oh, no, not at all. We didn't punt anything. You can't do these things without setting general rules. I mean, if the question, should we have said specifically? First of all, there were two problems if you did things specifically. On the one hand, you get people to get around it. If you are very specific about what you have banned, I guarantee you these people will find other ways. You have to have more general sets of rules. Secondly, it's not possible to have set forever what the rules are. What should the capital charge be for systemically important institutions? That may vary. What if we get experience with this? I mean, if we set this in the statute, then you're not able to take any experience into account. We also have this situation where we don't live in an isolated one country universe. We have to work with other countries.
But surely you didn't get 100% right. This is something that took a long time and a lot of fighting and back and forth. There must be something you have some regret over.
With the press, the question is always, who do you like better, your mother or your father? And there's no right answer. So question one was, shouldn't you have been more specific? Two, did you get everything right? Well, the two questions answer each other. No, it's precisely because we knew we couldn't get everything exactly right that we did leave room through the regulators. And in that regard, I think that's the answer to your question. I don't think the principles were wrong, that derivatives should be on exchanges to the extent that that's possible. Exactly which ones and how you coordinate with the international, we left that open.
Now that we've asked the regulators to decide this and kind of implement it, what grade would you give them? The SEC, the CFTC, how well are they doing?
Oh, A's. The problem is that they haven't been given the money. You have to take that into account. I mean, it looks a little bit like some of the teachers who, if you're going to evaluate teachers and how well the children do, then you really do have to take into account the backgrounds of the children that they bring to school and their capacities.
Was Dodd-Frank the hardest legislative fight in your long career?
Yeah, because it had all the elements to make it very stressful. First of all, it was very important. I mean, look, it was, and it really begins with 2008. I mean, you get the TARP and it all melds in. I mean, we have George Bush's appointees, Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson, coming to us and saying, the world is about to end if you don't do this. And so the stakes were very, very high.
What are you still hearing from Wall Street about complaints surrounding this law?
Well, I hate to say this, but the impression I get most is that their feelings are hurt. Oh, you were rude to us. You said we were fat cats. You hurt our feelings. We didn't cause this problem. I don't know how they can say that. I really think it's more...
And what do you say back?
What?
What do you say back to them when they make that argument, our feelings are hurt?
What? Get over it. I mean, I'm in the kind of business where people say rude things about us all the time. I've said that to them. Look, this is... and to some extent, you did cause this problem, and you have to accept that fact. The efforts to amend the bill are not so much coming from the financial institutions as from the ideology of the Republicans. And even there they have a problem, because the Republican Party is a little bit split on this. The Tea Party, there's a very ideological, pure free market conservative wing of the Republican Party, and then there's the Tea Party wing, and they're not the same by any means, although there's some overlap. They are united in opposing any effort to deal with climate change, and they are united in hating the health care bill. But the Tea Party people are not natural great defenders of derivatives. The slogan, let's re-deregulate derivatives, isn't one that's going to bring the masses to their feet. The problem, I think, is not as much from Wall Street. They are pushing back on some of the specifics. I think they've accepted it more and understand the need to work for it. And many of them say, look, we think many of these things are basically there. In some cases, some of the financial institutions were supportive of much of what we did.
So what's the legacy then of Dodd-Frank? If you, down the road, what are we going to be saying about Dodd-Frank in 10 years, let's say?
In 1850, there were no big no big companies in America. By 1890, there were, so they had to pass the antitrust laws, and that's what happened in the late 1890s and on into the 1900s. And then that evolved, and you got a big stock market, no rules for it, and Franklin Roosevelt put in those regulations. That then evolved into a lot of new sources of money, new sources of liquidity. I mean, the role of the public sector here is, as the private sector innovates, to come up with appropriate regulations And the goal is to try and get the best benefit from these innovations while minimizing the harm. And I hope that's what we'll be able to say, that as the antitrust laws did, and the Federal Trade Commission and the Food and Drug Administration did around the turn of the last century, and as the New Deal did with the Investment Company Act and the SEC, we put into law in the Financial Reform Bill a set of rules that allow the society to get the benefit of the very important work done by financial intermediaries while minimizing the damage that comes from recklessness.
Thank you, Congressman Frank.
Okay.
Really appreciate your time. I'm Ben Protest for New York Times.